Sitting down to analyze Jaws the Revenge, I was fully prepared to have tons of reasons for why this movie is underrated. It's something I've always felt since I was a kid, and by God, I was gonna talk about it. But after rewatching it recently, I realized to my dismay that Jaws the Revenge might just be irredeemably bad. There are bits and pieces here or there that work better than others, but from just looking at the title of this movie and its horrible tagline, all signs point to something just being wrong here. And to see just where everything went so wrong, I'm gonna analyze Jaws the Revenge looking at 3 things it did well and 3 things it didn't do so well. This is the good and the bad in Jaws the Revenge. And let me tell you, Jaws the Revenge puts its best foot forward. Its first strength is all the stuff in Amity. These are the best opening credits in the series since the original. I like the touch of the shark's POV skimming the surface of the water, and this is a banger rendition of the original John Williams score composed by Michael Small. Jaws movies traditionally open with a watery demise pretty early on, so when we move to focus on Ellen and Sean Brody, there's a sense of foreboding that's palpable. Like, there's a surprising amount of tension that gets wrung out just by having Sean almost going home only to be called back into the office time and again. Between this, the choir practicing their Christmas carols, and the slow build up to Sean approaching the buoy, Jaws the Revenge has me in its grips. The eventual attack is a bit sloppily edited, the shark is already covered in blood, and it's confusing, but the confusion actually enhances the horror as the shark brutalizes Sean while the carolers keep on caroling. And having watched this movie as a kid, this song always gives me the creeps. The rest of the Amity portion is about Ellen Brody grieving, and this movie gets a lot of flack for its revenge subplot, but I think here it's not quite supernatural. It's just a mother who's going through this traumatic event and reacting kind of irrationally.
Sharks don't commit murder, they don't pick out a person.
It picked out Sean. It killed your father.
Dad died from a heart attack.
He died from fear. The fear of it killed him.
I actually think this section where Ellen and Michael are grieving in their own ways is effective, but this is where Jaws 4 starts to lose me. Like, the grief is all good, but then it just keeps on happening. People are just grieving and grieving and grieving, mostly just Ellen, and it just gets boring. Jaws 4 is boring, and that's weakness number 1. If the grief stayed in Amity, it might have worked better, but the grief takes a vacation with the Brodies to the Bahamas and is in full force for like 20 minutes after Sean's death, with very little shark action to go along with it. And to drum this into our heads that Ellen is grieving, she has a nightmare about sharks and a really obnoxious flashback to Sean mimicking Martin from the original. Like, there was already emotion in this opening part of the movie, but force-feeding the emotion with this flashback just doesn't work, especially because the flashback just feels like it's here to set up the later scene between Michael and Thea. And because Jaws the Revenge has no confidence in itself, Ellen has to explain what we just saw after that scene with Michael and Thea.
You don't know what it did to me. You look just like your father. Do you remember when you guys used to imitate him?
Yes, I remember that. You flashed back to it. I'm surprised that there's no scene with Ellen talking to Martin's ghost where she asks him, "Do you remember telling a shark to smile, you son of a bitch?" And this is how Jaws the Revenge torpedoes itself straight into the depths of boredom. It hammers the same character beats over and over. It utilizes things like flashbacks and dreams in the most obvious manner, and it holds off on bringing the shark back into the fold for too long. And the shark is not good in this movie, it's too well lit, and the design team seemed to go all out on its gums, so much so that it should have been called Gums the Revenge. But I feel like the shark in a Jaws movie deserves to drive the plot a little bit more than the romance between Ellen Brody and Hoagie. Now, don't get me wrong, I appreciate Jaws 4's effort here in giving us a relationship between an older couple, and in a vacuum, I think the relationship works.
I don't know why I've told you all of this. I hardly know you.
Sometimes talking to a stranger is easier.
But for the main character, this should be a side plot. Jaws the Revenge drops all things shark from Ellen's character arc once she and Hoagie start seeing each other. She does have a psychic flash to the shark during their first date, and that psychic connection is dumb as hell, but at least Jaws the Revenge is thinking about the shark in that scene literally. But the rest of the outings, it's just dates, it's just romance, and it's kind of meandering. Like, Ellen and Hoagie go through a lot of character development, but it doesn't feel like purposeful character development.
When I was a small boy, I dreamed of always being warm.
That's it? You wanted to be warm? When he started saying, "Oh, when I was a kid," I expected this giant Michael Caine speech, and I don't know where I got that idea from.
A long time ago, I was in Burma. My friends and I were working for the...
Wow, I was thinking about an entirely different movie, which explains why this conversation doesn't play out quite as I remembered it.
I have an irresistible urge to kiss you, Ellen Brody.
Why?
Some men just want to watch the world burn.
And yes, I mentioned Christopher Nolan and The Dark Knight in a Jaws the Revenge video, but that's just to illustrate how Jaws the Revenge is not coherent with its story or characters. Like, Carla Brody is decent, Karen Young does a fine job as Mike's wife, but my god, what is with her and Mike's love life being the focal point of like 3 separate scenes?
Hey, may your sex life be as busy as your shirt.
Thank you.
I hope it take your mind off things,
I
Sam.
hope not. I mean, I am counting on a long, happy sex life.
I always wanted to make love to an angry welder.
Okay, that last line was actually pretty hilarious, but none of this has anything to do with the shark, and it just bores me after like 2 seconds. There's one side plot that is related to the shark. It's Jake and Mike's conflict over whether or not to track the shark or continue studying snails. But Jaws 4's determination to steer all character motivations away from the shark comes up here again, as once Mike agrees to go after the shark while they're looking for the shark. What is the only thing Michael wants to talk about?
How long have you known Hoagie? What? How long have you known Hoagie? What the hell's Hoagie got to do with this?
I'll tell you what the hell it has to do with this. Michael's not happy that Ellen and Hoagie are seeing each other. And we need like 5 or 6 scenes of that. Jaws 4's second weakness is it doesn't know what kind of movie it wants to be, and because of that, all the character motivations get diluted. As dumb as it is, the movie implies that the shark is out for revenge against the Brodies because this time it's personal, and the drama for Mike is to hide the shark's presence from Ellen because she knows it's personal. But his character arc gets sidetracked when his mind should be on the shark. The scene immediately after the first time he gets attacked is him preoccupied by Hoagie.
Took her sightseeing.
His Hoagie obsession is even stranger considering his brother was killed like 10 days ago by a shark. And the way the script handles it, it's like Michael doesn't care at all. And it's just poorly written. It makes no sense given what's going on with the shark. And it's a big reason why during the scene where Mike and Jake are out looking for the shark, I was always confused why Jake would laugh after Mike says this line because I thought he was talking about the shark.
He's after my mother.
And maybe most egregious of all, Jaws the Revenge doesn't even try to explain why Mike would think it's a good idea to not tell his family there's a shark out there when his daughter loves to swim in the ocean. Maybe that's why they focus so heavily on his and Carla's potent lovemaking. It's the only reason that makes sense why she's still with him at the end. The movie's just all over the place with these character motivations, arcs, and what's actually happening to them. 18 minutes after first being attacked by the shark and having spent nearly all of those 18 minutes whining about Hoagie, Michael suddenly has nightmares about the shark. And I'm like, when did you start caring about the shark? And worse, these confusing nightmares actually undermine maybe the best scene in Jaws the Revenge. When the shark attacks Mike in the minisub and chases him through the shipwreck, it's goofy, but just like the opening attack on Sean, there's real intensity here. It's a surprisingly elaborate set piece with some creative moments. But the scene is undermined by a cutting right to Michael awake in bed in an almost identical shot to the one where he woke up from a dream of the shark attacking. So me as a kid, I always thought this elaborate set piece was all a dream, that it didn't happen. And so much of Jaws the Revenge peters out like this. The stupidest plot element here is that the shark is implied to have a motive, revenge. And Ellen apparently has a psychic connection to this vengeful vacationing sea demon, something made clear when it makes its grand bohemian entrance. Like I said, super dumb, and it's dumb the second time this comes up, it's dumb the third time this comes up. It never comes up a third time. Jaws the Revenge just drops this entirely because it's so focused on having Ellen and Hoagie have a relationship. Like, the movie goes so hard on this side plot that when it circles back to Ellen being convinced the shark is out for revenge, it's out of sync because of how much time has been spent with her wondering what Hoagie sees in her and not about the shark.
I don't even know if he's serious.
And because the story is in shambles, Jaws 4 really has to stretch itself out to make Ellen's situation more dramatically satisfying at the climax. But because she's had nothing to do with the shark for like an hour, we have to resort to flashing back to either a scene from the beginning of this movie, a scene from like 10 minutes ago, or to scenes from the original that should be embarrassed to be a part of this ending.
Smile, you son of a bitch!
What the f was that? When I first saw this movie, I saw the version where the shark was stabbed by the boat and bled out. That wasn't a great ending, but it at least made sense. I don't know what this is. I mean, if you freeze frame it, the ship is made out of like balsa wood, the shark looks like a character from Gumby, and the bloody chunks and water spray are so obviously obscuring like a 2-inch miniature. This is studio meddling at its worst because they weren't satisfied with the original ending and demanded reshoots and somehow were okay with this garbage. And they also insisted on having Jake survive, despite the fact that he was eaten in front of the characters because it was too sad of an ending to have Jake die, apparently. So instead, we have the actor swimming in a tank with a very fake-looking background, making jokes, while Jake channels his inner Ian Malcolm because the worst this shark could do to him was rip his shirt open.
What the hell are you doing alive, huh?
Life, finds a way.
What a preposterous movie, and I can't believe I have 2 more strengths to go. Let's get on with this. Strength number 2 is the characters. And that might sound contradictory to everything I said before because there's a lot of issues with the characters, but beneath all the utter bullshit, I like these characters, I like these actors, and I like the performances. Like, I may have made fun of this movie for not killing off Jake, but Jake was my favorite character growing up. I enjoy the relationship between him and Mike, there's an easy camaraderie there, and some great chemistry between Mario Van Peebles and Lance Guest.
I don't know shit about electronics.
Well, you don't know shit about anything. It's time you learn. I teach you how to wear your hair.
And I always enjoyed Mike in this movie, even if I think his character arc is stupid. But I talked about Mike plenty early on. I'll just say here that I think Lance Guest is good in this movie until the climax when I think he realized just how bad this movie was getting. And as for Carla Brody, I think Karen Young does some pretty good work here in a thankless role. This could have been phoned in, but I think there's a lot of nuance to her performance that I appreciate. And a word on Judith Barcia as Thea. The real-life tragedy around her death the year after Jaws Revenge came out is heartbreaking, and it makes me sad now when I watch this movie. When I was younger, I found the performance annoying and a bit too precocious, but now as an adult with a similarly aged kid, I find her performance to be pretty good.
Where's the lady who brings the soda? They had them on the big plane.
And that brings us to Hoagie, played by Michael Caine. And I love Michael Caine, but I honestly think he's the weakest link here, which is kind of surprising because in his early scenes, he's pretty good at turning on that familiar Michael Caine-ish charm.
The world would be a better place if more sons danced with their mothers.
And as much as I derided the romantic focus of this movie, I think he's good with Ellen and there's some nice interactions there. The problem with Hoagie is in the climax. I feel like all of the actors struggled at the end of this movie because the script was absolutely terrible and did them no favors whatsoever. But Michael Caine seemed to have taken it one step further because he just dives in headfirst into the shittiness of the climax and hams it up. Like he's just dropping one-liners repeatedly.
Bloody hell, you gotta start to double the breath on that thing.
Maybe he's done indigestion. He's already eaten my plane. Maybe he had a heart attack. Too much fatty food.
Props to Michael Caine for trying to enjoy himself here, but this robs the climax and the shark of any sense of menace or danger. Though that was an uphill battle anyway. Also, I want to point out one specific line for its stupidity.
How the hell you do that, man? It wasn't easy, believe me.
Wasn't easy? That is the ultimate cop-out answer. That's the movie saying, we can't really explain how he survived, so here's a funny line. Also, I think it was remarkably easy. I mean, Jake survived much worse, and he did it pretty easily too. But that confusion is a symptom of the sloppy direction of this movie. It's why the tone is all over the place, character arcs are meandering, and the atmosphere shifts wildly from one section of the movie to the next. Weakness number 3 is Joseph Sargent's direction. And I already talked in depth about a lot of these issues in different parts of the video, no need to rehash them, but I'm going to focus on the shark and how once it finally drags itself from the anemic pacing of the beginning, it never stops showing itself. And I know the Bahamas are a brightly lit location, and it's probably hard to obscure the shark in those waters, but man, I wish they had done a better job of not showing us the shark so much. I mean, did we need a full body shot? Did we need to see the shark standing on its tail so many times in this really fake looking manner? Did we need so many slow motion shots? Dear God, the slow motion shots of the shark coming out of the water. Did we need to hear the shark roar? Now granted, the shark roaring is not something that was introduced in Jaws the Revenge.
My way.
But when you're using the same sound effect as a cartoon, the bad direction is emblematic of all the problems in Jaws Revenge, and it's why no matter how hard I look, I can't find a third strength. So I'm not even gonna try, I'm just gonna go ahead and end this video. Please like and subscribe to my channel, even though I didn't give you guys what I promised at the beginning. What, you want me to reshoot the ending? I guess I can try. Jaws the Revenge's third strength is this one shot. I always thought this was a brilliant bit of direction just to have the shark suddenly there next to Jake. It's terrifying. There, that's the third strength. I guess I'm done. Please like and subscribe. Kind of a bad reshoot, but what do you expect when I'm so tired?
Smile, you son of a...